Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for Editor's Lounge. Round of applause. Woo! Awesome. So we're happy to be back here. It's been since November since we've hosted one of these. We have another one coming up next week as well. So tonight's topic is DaVinci Resolve, post-production. We're super excited. We have, if you haven't seen already, Studio Network Solutions is one of our sponsors today. Please go check them out. They are the workflow tool you need in the back end of any of your post-production houses. We also have KeyCode Education, which Jonathan Amayo is the Chief Education Officer. So we briefly, before we want to get started, we want to just do a quick introduction because probably half of you are like, who the heck is KeyCode Media? Who the heck is KeyCode Education? So let's start with our Jonathan Amayo with KeyCode Education.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Oh, is it up? If you guys haven't heard of KeyCode Education, I think we've become the de facto place to learn about production and post-production in SoCal and even NoCal. We do vocational training, subscription-based training. We have scholastic training. We just ran a Resolve course in Inglewood. Where's Kershawn? He was our instructor. Right there, yeah, in Inglewood. So we're teaching in high schools, colleges, and of course, we just launched our apprenticeship program. Speaking of Resolve, we've actually written 3 custom courses with Resolve. We have an engineering course, we have an assistant editing course, and then the course we taught at Inglewood, which is an intro DR100 to the cut page of Resolve for anyone new to editorial whatsoever. If you're looking for any training, we literally work hand in hand. We have the Blackmagic team here. They're great. They're in Burbank. We have all of the equipment in the classroom here, just upgraded. We even have the mini panels, we have the keyboards. This is a great place to learn Resolve, and I am a huge advocate of it. Why? Because it's free. It's accessible on every platform, including iOS. I can't say enough great things about it. And then, if you're in the state of California, hopefully you know about ETP training, Employment Training Panel. This is subsidized training from the state of California for working professionals who prioritize the media industry, trying to keep jobs in California. Also, Jim Turner from MPEG is here. He just mentioned Contract Services is back for MPEG members, which is a system that reimbursed you for taking education, full reimbursement. Now is the time to learn with all of the things taking place between AI, between cloud. This is the time. And then the last thing I want to point out is we just launched our post-apprenticeship program. I know we have one. Julian, raise your hand. I don't know if any of the others stayed around, but we will be accepting new cohorts in April. And this is something where we're training essentially engineers from the ground up, ACSR, the DR400, the engineering class for Resolve, virtual machines, cloud-based storage, SNS storage. We're just talking about training on that product. This is a great time to get your skills set up. If you're concerned, if you just want to take that next step, please reach out to myself or the Toad. Our education manager, Veronica Warner, who has been a champion this year. Thank you. And that's all I got.
Wow, I'm not sure if that really is our education manager, Veronica Warner. So, all right, and then I just want to briefly touch upon KeyCode Media, which we're a systems integrator nationwide, audiovisual broadcast, post-production. I'll keep the infomercial short. We're also a reseller for 400 plus products, including Blackmagic Design, SNS, and everything that you have in your workflow. And so quick examples from the audiovisual side, it's things like we're going to college campuses and building out 20, 30 classrooms at a time, redoing auditoriums, projectors to the control, and also lots of remote-ready conference rooms with those Teams and Zooms. Broadcast. We have our VP of broadcast here. Raise your hand, Mason Pierce. Are you in the room right now? Woo! Oh, okay, maybe he's in the back. All right, so we're building all the major sports stadiums you can think about across the country, college, pro, everything from Blackmagic Design to Ross and all the major control rooms, comm systems all throughout a stadium in a control room in a sports environment. We're also doing broadcast news and building out stations like that. And then lastly, our bread and butter, we always started as post-production, and we are a reseller of all the top brands, as well as helping people from everything from ingest to edit to shared storage, to review and approve, all the way through the chain. We help people build brand new facilities from the ground up, or just when you want to refresh those computers at 1 year, or refresh the monitors. We're always there to help rewire, set up equipment, test it, train your team on how to use it, and send them to KeyCode Education to learn more about it. And just wanted to highlight one quick story we have at Gold Tree Studios. It's a rental house down in Hollywood. This is an amazing facility with multiple color bays, Dolby Atmos audio edit suite that we built out, multiple executive suites and so on, all connected to SNS Shared Storage, by the way, where they're collaborating on all the latest TV film projects in a TPN approved facility. So that's all I wanted to say. But before we get too far, I just kind of want to bring out the Toad, because this is actually a bigger deal. Come here, Toad. The Toad wasn't actually ready for this, but we've been putting a lot of thought into how can we make system integration more exciting, and we just want to leap into the future with the KeyCode Toad. So you guys, we were not supposed to announce this to NAB. This is actually our only NAB announcement, is the KeyCode Toad. But we just thought it's Leap Day, so how can we not leap into this day without premiering the KeyCode Toad? Awesome. All right. Thank you, Veronica. I mean, KeyCode Toad. Yeah. And with that, I'm going to hand it over. So we got 1 hour of DaVinci Resolve with Sean Carlson, followed by an amazing panel discussion on editing and finishing and really about how to grow your career. All right. Welcome, Sean Carlson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And it's great to be back. I think like leap year, it's leap day. I think it was about 4 years ago the last time I was here. So it's every leap day, okay? That's what we're gonna do. All right. So how many of you are familiar with what we're talking about tonight? Everybody, right? Absolutely everybody. Excellent, great. I'm sure that there are a number of different use cases across this group. So I'm not gonna bore you too much with the basics, but what I do wanna go over, and I tend to do this basically every time. You told me I have an hour, so hopefully I don't eat it all up, all right? Because I want to leave some time for Q&A. But I have a tendency to just kind of keep diving in a little bit. So, everyone just, every now and then, oh, no, all right? So what we're in right now is just one of several pages, right? And you can see this at the bottom. Sorry, I won't turn away from my mic. You can see this at the bottom. I've got media, cut, edit, fusion, color, fairlight, and deliver. And I probably will tend to use my shortcuts to jump between them, right? This is just Shift 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera, 6 through 8 there at the bottom. Then Shift 1 is this home icon. Shift 9 is project settings. And of course, those are incredibly important. And there are a number of things to talk about in there, at least in this current version, which we're looking at now is 18.6.5. And I am going to show. I'm going to show a number of things. Most of the things I'm going to show, and excuse me, I am a little warm up here. Most of the things I'm going to show are going to be capable of. You'll be capable of doing this in the free version, right? That was what Jonathan mentioned, right? The free version. This is great because we have a solution available for everyone, all the way from free, up to any number of these control panels and integrations that we have with our hardware. While I'm talking about the control panel, this is just the micro panel. The micro panel, the small speed editor, the full size editor keyboard, any of those control panels that you're talking about that you get for DaVinci Resolve include the Pro license, so you get the full studio version of that when you acquire one of those devices. So let's jump right in. First things first, we're in the media page, right? And the media page is organized in this viewer, top and bottom panels. This top left-hand side is going to be directly connected to media. And this is my media storage. Down at the bottom is actually my media pool. So these are things that exist in my project, things that I've already imported. And it's important to remember that as I import media into my project and they exist up here and I can enable this live media preview that allows them to scrub and things like that, I'll see some metadata information about it as I click on them. This is the same area that I might choose to engage the audio sync, right? Because there's a manual sync function here. If I've got, as in this case, I have some interview bytes. If I wanted to sync my interview angles to my second system audio, I would do this with the auto sync option. Now, as you can see, hopefully you can see, it's kind of tiny. That says based on timecode and then based on waveform. Now, based on timecode and append tracks, or based on waveform and append tracks. So the difference being that if we look at these clips themselves, and we just want to look at, at the clip attributes of the clip itself. In this case, if I click on the audio tab, right, you can see all the things that are available in the video tab, including the ability to decide or force this to conform to a different frame rate. But the frame rate shows up here. The data levels, the PAR, all of these attributes here. But if you look at audio, this is where we have the audio sync, actually, and you can see all of the embedded and linked channels. So embedded channels 1 and 2, this is what the camera shot, right? Linked 1 through 4, in fact, you can see that they came across with, linked 1, linked 2, linked 3, linked 4. Some of the names come in, right? Mix, etc., boom, Chris for the lav. And in this case, all I've exposed is a single channel. It doesn't mean that all the other channels aren't there. They're there. They're just kind of being hidden. They're not presented to Resolve. And this is really useful, especially when all I really care about with this guy is just to get his clean audio track represented. But I can go in at any time and change which ones. In this case, if I just said I wanted to add three more, right? Let's just get rid of that and type a 3. And add. Well, now I just have the ability to pull or to decide which channels that I want to expose. And of course, I picked, adding 3 more mono tracks. Now, I'm just going to cancel out of that because we don't really need them. But just know that this is also the same place that we might choose to browse media wherever the media exists. Now, in this case, let's just go to, something like, it's probably easier for me to turn around while I'm doing this because of the tiny screen that I'm mirroring here to the giant one. I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of UHD on this size screen, right? It's not my preference. So, but we must, okay, because we got to get it out here. But so what we're looking at here is this is media that actually isn't imported. I have yet to bring this into the project file, and yet I have the ability to scrub across. I can even decide that I'm making some selects about what I'm bringing into the project file. And you'll look at some metadata that's available, but none of this is editable. I can't change any of this metadata. As soon as I bring this clip back down into this area, then that metadata is available. So if I just said, let's drop it into the no bin, so you can see. Now that metadata is something that I can actually expose. Let's do all groups, and we can add keywords to this. Before I turn this into an infomercial for SNS, I did want to point out that the kind folks at SNS were allowing me to use this as part of the demo, so I thought I would show you exactly how their product works as integrated into Resolve, because that is a function that they have. And we do allow for workflow integrations as well as scripts, right, that you might add. And there is the workflow integration for Share Browser. So this is another way. We're in the media page. This is one of their interfaces that allows us to decide, right, where's our media, what media do we need, what kind of tags do we have on the media. This is important to talk about because as you add tags or you import media that has tags, right, whether they're Finder-based tags, keywords you've added, they're attached to this media. As we import this media, what this cool little browser is doing, the preset right now is set up for automatically generating proxy media. So if you were to work with something like this, a share browser style thing, perhaps from SNS, when you were doing things like that, you can actually import and bring across all that extra work that you may have put into it, in the MAM itself. Now, going back to Resolve, what that gives us is these smart bins. Now, smart bins, right here, I have collections and I have keywords. As I start bringing media in, so let's go back to my share browser. Oops, let's do it from the workspace menu again. As I bring media in, and let's just say we're going to bring in this car, I'll put that here. And it keeps hiding, so I apologize. I got to keep moving everything to do that. As I bring media in, if it's got all of these keywords and any media, whether you've done it at the Finder level or you've done it, in the Explorer level, this media now has all of these embedded keywords, and I can sort with these keywords in smart bins. Now, smart bins are metadata-driven bins, so they're not the same as this, traditional hierarchy that you might create, but you can import this hierarchy. So if this is where the media exists, and the media exists, inside this particular directory, is I grab this layer and add this layer, it's going to import the entirety of that directory that's exposed, and it's going to maintain all of its hierarchy. So the same would happen here if I dragged it in, but if I drag down to the lower area, what you'll find is that all it's going to do is it's going to bring in media. So you can bring media in with no structure if you drag it into the right-hand side, and you can bring media in with structure if you drag it to the left-hand side of this media pool. So you can save your structure, your hierarchy, and of course, this media page is where you're going to do all of those things that you would otherwise have to populate metadata and sync second system and any other selects that you wanted to create. So that was long. It was a long time that we're in the media page. Okay, everyone knows how the media page works. So let's move to the cut page. Now, as Jonathan mentioned as well, this is something that there's a class on at KeyCode. And if you find that you want to start with something that we offer as well, if you go to the Blackmagic Design website, you'll find that we have the official training books as well. These are PDFs. And while the first one is the intro, or essentially the please show me everything about Resolve, but in one little 9 episode or 9 test kind of a book, it's a short book, 9 different things that you can learn. And in the process of doing that, you're going to touch all of the attributes of Resolve and get a pretty good overview as to how to jump into it. One of the first things you're going to learn is how to work in the cut page, because the cut page is kind of a different interface than maybe a lot of us have used in the past. So looking at this cut page, I have 2 timelines. They're always interconnected, and I can edit changes in either of them. You'll see that they're connected. Right? I can reposition, I can do a whole bunch of different things directly from the cut page. The cut page, however, with a single viewer, now allows me to switch. Now, if you look at this interface area where my mouse is moving at the top left-hand corner of the viewer, as I switch into the source tape mode, and then, sorry for that, pop. Let's bounce all the way out to the root of my bin. You can see that the source tape mode actually shows me all of my clips, everything, in one linear source tape. And that's sortable right here with this sort by. So as you can see, we're sorting by time code. And we have a number of different ways to do that. As you adjust, sort by clip name, things like that, what you'll find is that it basically, it shows you just how fast we get to restart Resolve on the SSDs. That's what it shows you. Apparently it's a new feature. So I'm just gonna do that for you right now. Someone give me a stopwatch. All right, and we're back. It's a good thing we have an SSD. So let's jump back into this again. Moving into the cut page, I find a lot of people are thrown off by not having a dual viewer, right, source and record. But I find that the way that I tend to use the cut page, and I didn't come to the interface first expecting a cut page, right? This is kind of, as we added in version 16, it was just another way to edit, another way to engage all this content. I find this source tape view to be one of my favorite things. And that allows me to go over a whole bunch of media all at once, make some selects, make some trims, mark some ranges, things like that. Then as we drop, say, this is the clip that I'm looking for, as we drop further in, and we're now in source clip mode. In source clip mode, you can see I've marked my range, right? And I can control it just like normal with the J, K, and L keys, right? Everyone is familiar with J going backwards, L going forwards, and K stopping. But a combination of those two is actually available. So when you KL, right, you can say I'm playing back at half speed, and KJ, I'm playing in reverse at half speed. And likewise, as you tap holding K, you can just nudge forward or backwards, tapping with L or J, okay? So just some more user interface things that you need to know. You need to know that you might not have realized before. Some other stuff. Once I've marked this range, what I like about the cut page is, and whoa, sorry about that with my mic right here. All right. When I'm in the cut page, what I really like to demonstrate is that there is a completely different method of doing multicam editorial, and it's in the cut page. And I'll start by just showing you that if we just drop into, from here, right, we're looking at this, we go into interviews, and if you see these little blue icons that indicate a sync relationship, that's because I opened this little sync icon here. If I hover over it, it says sync clips, okay? But actually, because I've already created the sync, I can just open the sync group without resyncing or asking it to sync again. It's going to show you how it found and made a relationship between these 3 clips. These 3 clips were all shot multicam, and I said, please sync by sound. And then I click the sync button, and then I click save sync. Having this sync relationship, right, you can see this little multicam moving in sync here. Having the sync relationship means that now that I've cut in my base layer, I found the first clip of this gentleman, and he says, hi, my name is so-and-so. Well, now he does. Okay. So having the base layer cut, if I switch over to the sync bin is my multicam editorial tool. So now, as I'm playing back over my lower, there it is.
My name is Chris Lang, and I'm the founder of Warrior Mountain Outfitters.
Excellent. There's my audio. So as I play over this, what you're seeing now is that the red line around it indicates which angle I've chosen. So as I play, I can just decide which angle I want to cut
in
to.
Las Cruces, New Mexico.
So if, in this case, I've already made a few of these cuts just to kind of pre-bake this show, right? Now we've got one, and it's in the oven. We take it out. So everyone's seen a cooking show like that. This is a little pre-baked for you. But basically the same thing happens as soon as I decide this is the angle that I want. And
my name is Chris.
My name is Chris.
Let me know.
Let's just say we're going to take my name is Chris.
My name is Chris Lang.
And I'm just going to take that part right to here. I've just marked the tiniest little range. Well, this is where having a sync relationship is really important, because the sync overwrite button in the cut page, which also corresponds to the editor keyboard and the the speed editor as well, right? So when you hit this button, sync overwrite will cut this clip in exactly where it matches, right? So I didn't have to tell it exactly where, and of course that was my bad. Here, let's show you that you actually probably want to do that if you've got this set up properly. There we go. I'm Chris Lang.
My name is Chris. Let me know. My name is Chris Lang.
My name is Chris Lang. That's good enough for me. All right. So let's cut him, but I deselected that I want to cut in audio, so we didn't double that, because I only have the single visual representation right now for my audio tracks, and these are all in sync audio. So it's really going to hide them and show them to me as single tracks in the cut page. But if I source overwrite, now what I've done is, well, let's switch. Actually, I'll show you the actual cut. Right? Woo, a flash frame. Look at that. Okay. So that's great, because not only do I have the ability to toggle between the edit points, and I can use the keyboard shortcuts to do that, right? All I've done now is I've used the V key, and the V key is jumping between edit points. Well, everything is also still connected at this point. I could make this edit here if I chose to. If that helps me, I can just extend the edit here. So let's extend the edit here, right? So here he is, wide. Okay, now maybe we're not going to cut back and forth from this guy that quickly, but I just wanted everyone to see how easy that was. It dropped it right in sync. That's just a sync relationship in the cut page. So that's some quick and dirty multicam. Then I've done the same thing, right? And I've cut a few angles together, and having cut just his bites together, I think at this point I probably want to move to the right in the workflow and move back to the edit page. Now the edit page, much more familiar to me, much more comfortable. I feel great right here because I have a source and a record. But you may prefer the other one, in which case you don't have to leave, right? It may just be me. I prefer to leave. But if you look, the tools are all hidden, okay? They're underneath All right, this isn't my favorite page, but that's okay. That's why the page exists. It exists so that it might be someone else's favorite page. And because even though it's not the favorite page that I choose to finish my project in, or to refine my project or my edit, it might be the one that I start with. I might start with it for sync. I might start with it for manipulating all of my media, right? But you'll notice that this page is designed that you don't actually have to leave. You'll find quick export options here, the ability to switch your overall resolution and PAR and size, and disable proxies, and switch to camera originals. You've got your transitions, titles, effects. They're all built into this page. In fact, you know, this page is designed to be really easily adjustable for just a single laptop screen, like I have right now. So again, really valuable. Maybe not the editing tool that you were expecting in a normal desktop environment with source and record, but certainly very valuable as a quick laptop editorial page. So moving back to the edit page, this is you know, my happy place. So I'll go back there. We have a number of different things in the edit page that I want to show, and probably the first thing that I want to do is, you know, in this case, let's go to the OMO stuff. I'm just going to select a bunch so that I can see it all. This is what I was referring to. That is a function in the three-dot menu. If you're not familiar with Resolve three-dot menus, please click on every one of them so that you can figure out what they do, because they all have special things in there, right? In this case, what I'm looking at is live media preview, right? You'll see that there's different things in this three-dot menu though, right? Like show timecode overlays. That could be a useful function. You know, you might want to see this live while you're cutting. I tend to do that too. All right. So having, you know, having this clip over here, let's just see. It's like, I don't know, let's take a half a pound or so of this little thing. That's the original. Cool. So let's jump to that one, because I've already built this. Again, I'm going to pull this one baked out of the oven. All right. And we're going to move to this multicam edit. And I want to show that, all right, so I've cut in the B-roll. Well, the benefit of doing that is I can show you some of the speed tools and some of the trim tools, all right? So let's do that. Are you playing back? Yes, excellent, all right. So if you're looking at the bottom, you can see that this is playing back in a forward direction. The blue arrows indicate forward direction right now, and it's at 100%. Now, if you just wanted to do something very simple, you'll notice that every clip, no matter where we've selected it in the interface, those clips appear and their tools show up in the inspector. Okay, so in the inspector, we do have a speed change function. This is relatively new in the, you know, the tool set, right? The speed change directly in the inspector. Well, this shows me I'm playing forward at 100%. It's pretty simple, right? I can force that to play backwards at 100%. And there it goes. I'm not sure we could tell that it was actually playing backwards based on that time lapse of those clouds. But if I chose to freeze, you can see that now it's stuck, right? It gets to that frame and then stops, right? So these are very easy ways of, you know, going through the speed change. But if I open up this speed retime control area, then I actually have the ability to see speed a little differently. In fact, I'll go ahead and add a speed point here so that I can show you what I'm talking about. So now with the speed point, I have multiple ways of controlling the speed point. Okay? This is actually changing the speed of the segment that I'm grabbing to the left. You can see that by the change in the color of that directional arrow. It's actually overwriting, and that's a function of the tool that I'm using. If I'm in the trim tool, that same function from here is going to ripple everything to include that speed change. Okay? So, however, if I grab from the lower half of this, I'm actually just repositioning where I want that speed segment to begin or to change. And I tend to turn on something called the curve as well, this retime curve at the bottom. It's an undocumented keyboard shortcut, but it's Shift-C. So Shift-C, okay, there it goes. It should be listed up there, but maybe it conflicts with something else. The good thing about the way that Resolve works with its keyboard customization, it's a great time to point this out, is you can see that I do have some customized versions of the traditional standard DaVinci Resolve setting right there. And as you make changes to it, it asks you to save as, right? It's not going to save over, it's just save as. Then, of course, if you wish to, you can use the three-dot menu. Again, the three-dot menu, it's my friend. You can export your preset this way. So what it does is just export this list, right, comma separated. So you'll see all of those. In fact, if you wanted to export this and then find and replace and make changes and then import it again, you see that import is actually a function above. If you wanted to export this and take it with you, maybe you have access to a thumb drive and you can sneak that onto the station that you're working on, and then you can import that text file. I don't recommend sneaking a thumb drive onto the station you're working on. I'm just telling you that, you know, perhaps you might be able to do this kind of thing. Maybe you could email it to yourself. I don't know. It's a text file. It's very simple. You can import that preset. You can have your favorite preset, you know, controlling Resolve. Okay, so that's the keyboard customization. You can see that to the side, I can actually add additional attributes. So in this case, Shift-C might be assigned to something, but because these can be separated by just the panel that they're asked to work in, or just the particular interface elements, you can set custom, it's every time I talk, it's the train. Cool. So yeah, you can set fully custom per panel shortcuts as well, okay? So if you just find that I'm working in these panels a lot, I prefer these keyboard shortcuts for this panel, you can set them there. They will not override, but once you get to the other panel where that keyboard customization is already set, then it does a completely different thing. So that's a potential for you here. And saving it, like I said, if I had made any changes whatsoever, it would ask me to save as. It would pop a little asterisk up here and tell me that it needed to be changed. I couldn't just save over the default. So that was all to show you Shift-C. So there it is. Here's Shift-C, okay? Let's go into what I'm exposing here with retime speed. And okay, let me show you retime frame, right? Retime frame, a lot of people understand retime frame. So if I point out retime frame as I hover over this, and hopefully you can see that tiny thing on the screen, but that's actually just, you know, time code, right? So a lot of people are used to using retime tools that include the absolute position of time code as your keyframe. In this case, retime speed is actually just a speed segment. So again, I've got the trim tool on, so I want this to ripple so that everyone can see what it's doing. But as I grab this speed segment and decide on the speed of this segment, it's actually rippling the rest of this. But you see it's shrinking this. Then I can take that and smooth it. Okay, this is not a full Bezier handle because I can't actually break axes, right? But I can actually smooth it. So it's just a smoothing of this attribute. So there's the attribute that goes from, you know, one speed to another speed, and it handles all that. Basically, you know, well, here, I could probably disable that so you don't have to see that just yet, right? There's our speed segment. I find that you know, changing speed segments is really intuitive to me. Hopefully it is to you as well, but again, retime frame, okay? If any of you hate speed segments or retime speed, just switch to retime frame. It'll work exactly as you're expecting it to. And again, the simpler stuff that you might want to do, even some exponential speed ramps, you can do either right-clicking or using this little pull-down menu. You can say change speed. You can set a speed directly. And then freeze frame is an option here, as well as these speed ramps that are available to you. And that's just an exponential ramp. So that's your speed control, but that's actually the same area that we can control our zoom, our position changes, right? Everything in the transform side of things can be enabled here as well. And in addition to that, we can look at them on screen. So if I just take this viewer and zoom out slightly, and I'm just using a 3-button mouse and the scroll wheel is doing this part, okay? 3-button mouse, really important. I recommend it because the middle mouse is always just a pan when you press and hold it, okay? But zoom is just natural. And of course, you can modify zoom, right, some ways, just with modifier keys. So having this transform tool here, and if you look at the inspector, this clip is selected. So if I wanted to engage the keyframing for the transform group, I could select this one, or I can just select individual attributes here to change. Having set a keyframe on this clip, let me go ahead and show you that there's the keyframe that I just set, okay? That's actually the position keyframe that I changed. But looking at this in another way, if I show, here, let's get out of that retiming. Okay, good. You see these little icons at the bottom? That was the curve that I enabled by clicking that little button. So you don't necessarily have to use Shift-C, okay? You can click the button. And next to that button is where my keyframes are. So as I twirl this little disclosure triangle down to see the attributes that I'm hoping to modify, well, in this case, it's going to be hard for me to see which ones I'm actually modifying. But if you can see that little dot that I'm moving, that's actually the keyframe. So this keyframe view allows me to reposition my keyframes, but it doesn't actually make a change to the keyframe value. So this is a very interesting way of being able to manipulate keyframes. Of course, we can do some position movements here. So imagine if we just said the position X and the scale is down, then the difference between these two keyframes is going to tween, right, automatically. Well, let's zoom into this space a little bit, because those are the keyframes that I just set, right? And navigating between these keyframes is done here, okay? Or you can use shortcuts. But if you just do this, as you see, right-click on this, you have linear and you have smooth. So in this case, because I actually want to go to the end, I'm just going to smooth the end instead. And that brings this additional Bezier handle. And the Bezier handle is, as you would expect, the ability to do a lot of interpolation between the speed. In this case, what you're looking at is the actual speed, as I moved it out of the way so you could see that. I hope you can see that. I can barely see it over here, but yeah, okay. So you can see those little dots moving. That indicates the speed. So that's actually going to show you the slowdown as we land on that space. And as we roll back, it's going to smooth into the end. Okay, yes. Now let's just, we saved the picture, right? Let's fix that. Okay, let's get out of that. Want to show the tools. Everyone understands the tools, the editing tools. I did talk about the normal tool versus the trim tool. That is all going to be paying attention to these little auto selects, right? Auto track selector. So imagine if I was in the trim tool and I wanted to ripple everything in this non-contiguous way. You notice that it's not affecting the track above. Well, sorry, without locking the track. It's not affecting the auto track indicator. So let's take off my lock. And as I go to trim things here, obviously it's not affecting that, right? Because that edit point happens prior. But as I'm back over here, it's not doing that. And if I were to break this clip, that one's also not going to work. That's okay. But you see how this one's actually connected, right? But if this isn't the edit that you were hoping to make when it happens, then it's because of these, the auto track selectors. So now it'll be ignored, okay? So it's not going to throw things out of sync, but you have to be aware of them existing, because that's kind of the reason for their existence, is that you're going to want to control only certain tracks at a time with the tools themselves as you go to use them. Now, you may not use the keyboard, and of course, every one of these things is controllable with keyboard shortcuts. That was just an easy comma period to roll a frame back or forward off the head or tail of this. In this case, the head of this clip, I was rolling it in both directions. But you can do this also with something called dynamic trim mode. Now, dynamic trim is it changes the playhead. Immediately it's yellow, okay? And this playhead now engages that, well, hopefully you can see that it's actually glowing green, okay? That's my edit point. But I'm controlling that now with the JKL keys, okay? So yet another way of doing this. I prefer to use maybe dynamic trim when I'm trying to listen to dialogue, and I really just want to loop a section. So in that case, then if say we were marking just a little section of this, and we dropped it into loop mode, and then we dropped it into this kind of playback, well, that gives me the ability to do things like, how do I like that? Right. In fact, let's go get the beginning of what he says there. So that's useful.
My name is Chris Lang, and I'm the My name is Chris Lang, and I'm the. My name is Chris Lang, and I'm. My name is. My name is Chris Lang. And
right? So you can see how that's useful for trimming dialogue, especially. But that's again, these are all going to follow these auto track selectors. Now, I did talk about the keyboard customization, and the easy way to find this is to just start filtering. So in this case, the select, you'll see take selector. If you choose track, right, as your option, oops, maybe type track by itself. You'll see all the things that would sort for track controls. Just get in the habit of using this if you're looking for shortcuts, because I use shortcuts all the time. And I couldn't imagine editing with just my mouse. So, you know, yes, we're doing all right? You're yelling at me? Excellent, appreciate that. Okay, thank you for that. Because I don't want to waste too much time on the nuts and bolts. I did want to show that, here, let's just break this out. This is just a graphic that we've dropped over. And of course, we can control the graphic with the reposition, reframing, retiming tools that are in the edit page. But what you see here is that there's a little animation going on. There's another icon right there at the bottom, because everything that we're doing so far, we're connected to all the pages in the workflow. And all I did was move between the pages. And moving into this page just brings me to the Fusion page, 3D VFX compositing tool. So there is my source, and if you look, that's the dot indicating viewer 1, okay? So that's why we just dragged it there. This is the dot indicating viewer 2. If I had a video I/O device and I had a confidence monitor or grading monitor there, that would be the third dot. You could preview directly to that. Something very simple here was set up as like a multiplane, okay? So there's my 3D ground plane X, Y, and Z for a full 3D multiplane composite. And all I did to this was just animate this little element here, and we're actually looking at the preview out. So, you know, as I control this camera, we can see where the camera is actually going to be in position and what that view is when we're done. So let's just show you what that looks like here, because we have a spline and a keyframe panel that controls all this. We showed this in the edit page. This is actually hidden in the keyboard curve, right? The keyboard curve or the inspector's transform tools. But in the Fusion page, these transform tools have expanded into 2 separate windows. And in this group, this is just the position keyframes for what I've done with that camera. And now I've grabbed the entire lot of them because I want to move them somewhere. Or maybe I've just grabbed, I'll just grab one of them. In this case, let's just take any of those, right? Like just reposition the middle point, right, where it lands. And then the quality of that animation is actually here in a separate panel. So what you're looking at is, while I've got the timing controlled in keyframe panel, I've got the animation style or quality controlled in the spline panel. So yeah, it just kind of pushes in and then bounces a little bit. This selected here is a full Bezier curve, and I've just done a little smoothing. Well, you can force this back into linear. All I did was use keyboard shortcuts to smooth it. That's either the S key or the F key, which is flatten. Flatten will make it parallel. It's just another trick that everyone needs to remember. But you can actually save these. Say you've built this absolutely amazing motion graphic animation like I have, right, everyone? Okay. If you could, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, no applause. No, that's all right. So, but if you look at export spline, right? So say you've spent all this time, you've made this animation preset, and I appreciate that so much. Thanks. And export spline now allows you to put this spline into a spline setting and recall it later. So if you save these spline settings, this animation control, you can recall it. You can save all of your favorites. You just drag select across all of your points, right click on them, say load spline, and then point to the spline you want. In this case, I would save it right there in the spline files, and then import that spline and recreate your animation. And then of course it's completely customizable. So if I said, well, that's great, the animation's great, but I need it to run longer, I can just come back in here and make a separate selection and reposition the timing keyframes themselves, okay? So now that we've done that, we move back to the edit page. This is just, well, hey, your name is Chris. Of course it is. I don't want to hear that part. Let's do this. All right, so there we've, instead of taking this animation element and doing it entirely inside of Resolve's edit page, I've chosen to do this in the Fusion page, and I just, as it fades out over the dude. Here's our multicam. And yeah, clearly we need some error in between that because I trimmed him up a little bit. All right, buy a shirt, give a lunch forever. This is amazing. So moving on, we went to Fusion. We're still connected to the same frame every time, right? But we moved to color page, and you're going to have an entire panel devoted to color. So I didn't really want to go into color tools necessarily, but I do want to show some of the great color features that are part of the, you might say the AI favored tools. So we'll just load that right now so we can do some of this. And yes, color page, magic mask, great. Let's go back here and make sure we're all loaded. This is loading from my internal drive, so nobody worry, it wasn't an issue with this beautiful machine, okay, that they gave me, right? All right, it's not a problem. Let's go, I'm just gonna go directly into the color page then. We'll just reconnect this. All right, I wanna show Magic Mask really quickly. And if you're looking down at the tool set here, Magic Mask is in this middle area. Selecting it, you'll see that I've only made one selection around this. And as it matches, right, and as I move, since it's not tracked, essentially it won't know that this part is what I'm asking it to match until I run the tracker. But the tracker tools are right below. So in this case, since I started at the head, I would just track forward. Okay. As you track forward, this turns red to blue. It indicates that it's been tracked properly. This is also a selection on object mask. Okay, we're still in the object magic mask, and this is just the object of the car. I think this is probably going to be easier if I just if I track this a little bit. And now, can I have someone hum the Jeopardy tune? Really? Thank you all. Appreciate that. Audience feedback is great, by the way. Loving it. Okay. So what Magic Mask is doing here is it's tracking that car, but it's ignoring what's obscuring it. So as I'm moving past, you'll see the truck is here, but the truck is not my selection anymore. And you can probably not tell so much until we get to the point where I've turned on the mask layer. But the other thing that we've done with it, if I turn on the mask layer on this lady, you can see that we've decided we're going to affect her blonde hair and make her strawberry blonde, just because we can. That one's been tracked. What we've used in that case is something called a Magic Mask Person, but person with features. Okay, so we've decided in this features pull down that we only want to see either arms, exposed skin, or hair, or things like that. We've done that. You've probably seen this gentleman before, okay? And yes, no Jeopardy music needed now. All right, this guy on horseback is passing by the Rhino, and let me turn on. There we go. Let's turn that on. So now you can see. As it's obscured by the Rhino, it figures out. Magic Mask understands. This is not what we asked for. We asked for the gentleman on horseback. We did not ask for the Rhino. And this tool is smart enough to figure out where the obscuration is happening, and it is not actually changing the mask. This is depth map. I'm going to skip that, and this is depth map. These are also VFX tools. It's not to say that you're not going to use it. As you can see here, we've got a selection made on this lady here. That is in the effects panel. That's the depth map. Turning on the preview, you can see how we've isolated this. So again, this isn't shot on green screen. This is shot against this window, and all I've done was I've made a selection, and then from that selection, I've got my mask. So I'm going to show these three things real fast, or maybe I'm going to show the next one real fast because I got to reconnect that one. I'm just going to move on. We're not going to show that one. We're going to show the eyeshadow. Okay. Actually, let's just go right to the pièce de résistance, please. All right. Let's connect this. And let's go to my settings. There we go. Turn off my mask. Okay, so in the surface tracker, which is where we are now, okay, turn on the OpenFX overlay, and I'll zoom into this panel so you can see what we've done here. I've just made this rough selection over her face, and then in this area here where I've asked for a hole to be cut out of this area, that's so that we don't get the blinking or her eye movement. And then as she moves her face, right, you can see that we have to track it for that to hold. Well, when we're in this view, let me just switch that off. We now move to, actually, might as well see all of them. See? I'm changing my mind. There's the mesh, okay? So you can see what it's actually drawn on for the tracking points. The tracking tools are within it. It's just one more tab over. We've tracked it already, and then the result is this composite. So now I can turn off the tool, and you can see that, great. We've given her a face tattoo. I'm not sure if she is as happy about it as we are, okay? It may not be her style. I just wanted to do it so that we could see. It's silly, it's obvious, right? You didn't think that that should work, okay? It doesn't look super realistic because you don't have a lot of skin tone or grain coming through it. But what you can see is that it's absolutely locking, right? So that magic mask, that surface tracker capability is pretty intense inside the color page here. And let's go get the next one, and then let's open it up to Q&A. So the same idea here, right? Surface tracker, bounds, turn that on, OpenFX, there's my boundary, there's the mesh that generated, I created a track, and then the result is connected to it, and of course, just moving that. Now you can see surface deformation, right? You can see the fabric stretch. Right.
All right, thank you, Sean.
All right, so I'm going to wrap now so that you can ask me a question or two
Guys,
before it's time for
if
me
you
to
want
leave.
to ask a question, raise your hand. We're going to take a couple questions. Here you go.
Yes.
If you're tracking, yes, if we're tracking something, and let's say in the middle there's an error, something we want to adjust, how would we adjust that without deleting?
Deleting the track forward. If you look
Yeah.
over here, you have track tools like clear all selected, clear from this point forward. Especially if you're looking at the magic mask tools, those are in here as well. But if you look in the track tools, there are other track options. I wonder if I could just push this. There we go. There we go. So now you can see some of the options: remove tracking data before this frame, etc. Right? You can find another frame, track forward from that frame. If you get to a point where that it's broken, you might end up having to break that into multiple pieces in order to track it properly. Yes?
In the Fusion page, you showed the logo.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a way to preview the track underneath it in Fusion from the edit page?
Yeah, in that case, what you saw was that all I did was actually move down into the Fusion page from my workflow. But if I were to say, take these three clips, and from these three clips here, turn them into a Fusion clip. Well, now that Fusion clip comes comped with everything in it. If I move into Fusion, you'll see that it's actually it's created that. So what it creates first, of course, is a merge, which is traditional to Fusion. It's an A over B merge. A lot of people were concerned about the A over B versus the traditional vertical stack compositing, where you can have multiple different tracks. Well, there's actually something called a multi-merge now. So if you just decide to go to multi-merge and you add layers to the multi-merge, and you can see these outputs are flexible because they're nodes. When you have the multi-merge selected, you have multiple layers here in this window that you can change. So you can create a multi-merge with multiple things. When you're doing a 3D merge, the 3D merge is always multiple because it's always Z depth. Yes?
Great. And if you guys have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you.
Yeah, are you going to be able to use the speed editor with the edit page? Is there a way to do that? No?
Absolutely. And I have my speed editor with me, but I was thinking that I was going to show it with the iPad. While I have the iPad connected to it, I've turned off my Bluetooth to have it disconnected from here. So I'd have to add it again to get my laptop to use it, because normally my laptop moves to a desktop editor instead. But yes, those speed editors, desktop, the full editor keyboard, they do work in the edit page. There are a number of things that the cut page can do, like switching between into the sync bin. You'll find that the sync bin function will show you the multicam in the edit page, but it won't engage the cut page's sync bin. But if you're in the sync, if you're in the edit page, you still have access to all of those other ones. And in fact, on the full editor keyboard, which does replicate the function keys, the F1 key, F1 through 12 keys, those are all still live as well on there. And some of them include like sync bin and transitions and durations. In fact, normally, because on the left-hand side, you'll have your direct editorial tools, like the big in-out buttons, but also the roll and the trim and the slide tools below. Above that, you'll have the direct editing, like the insert or the smart insert, or the source overwrite that we showed with the sync bin multicam editing. Yes?
Hi, so my question was, if you have audio, so my name is Camilla, and then like my question was, if you have audio that's carrying from a video that goes into like the background noise from a video goes into the next shot, like how would you like remove basically the audio from the video goes into the next shot, how would you like demask that or like remove it?
Okay, so let's look, one thing I can point out now, since I do have dynamic switching enabled, is I have another project open in the background. So you're talking about when they're linked. Well, first of all, you can always unlink, okay, and that's individual. But if you leave linking on, you can just option click on things, and it just selects them, even if they're linked. The other way that you can do this is, obviously not necessarily just with a mouse, okay, but since I'm rolling the edit back here, I'm creating either the J or the L cuts that you're referring to, right? Just that simply. And you can do it with keyboard shortcuts too. And you can do the same thing in the cut page. You just have to, well, in my case, the edit that I was showing you didn't have a separate audio track, or if it did, it wasn't exactly visible. So you couldn't see it in that view. But if you're cutting in separate audio tracks in the cut page, you have the same ability to do the J or L cuts with that. Yes.
Excuse me. So if I remember correctly, you can transfer projects from other editing platforms onto Resolve, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So how does it react to things that might be different or unique to that platform? Let's say Premiere Pro. How does it react to transferring over and creating it and starting it on Resolve?
So that's a great question, and if you already are working with a pre-cut timeline, you can just import timeline. When you do that, it opens up this little import timeline dialog box. You can choose which format you're working with, and to your point, if you're working with an XML that Premiere provides, you're going to find that most things come across, and if there are things that don't come across, it could be because of plugin support, right? If you wanted to match plugins. In some cases, there's a round-trip workflow people like to use with other editorial programs where you import an XML from, an Exchange format from Premiere or from Final Cut or an AAF from Media Composer, and that's the file import timeline function. If you're conforming back to that, which is yet another stage later, then there are other tools available to decide how you interpolate the motion. Right, motion and retiming and things like that. So most of the time, I would say that you're going to want to leave it on Resolve for retiming. And then even in the case of the AAF, when that comes across from Media Composer, the retimes, the intent is to match every frame. So they read every frame, they match every frame, and they simply apply that transform to every frame. So should be good. Your mileage may vary. It's Exchange formats. There's an Exchange format called the DaVinci Resolve timeline. So that would probably be the easiest, but of course now you're in DaVinci Resolve land. And then of course there's Open Timeline IO, right? Maybe some of you are working on platforms that need OTIO stuff, and we support OTIO and OTIO-Z, which is the zipped up version, which includes media as well for Exchange. That promises to do everything that the other ones don't. I think, it's not our format, but we support it. Yes?
On functionality with the Fusion page, if I'm freelancing and I'm exporting off of a PC, I can't do Apple ProRes unless I download the actual Fusion program itself, add a node, and then export Apple ProRes 444. Will in Resolve itself you ever be able to export a ProRes 444 from a PC without taking a mezzanine file and then putting it into Fusion itself.
Yeah, I see what you're referring to, which is that Fusion Standalone has the ability to write to QuickTime ProRes, right? But it does not have the ability to do so with audio because it's a standalone 3D comp VFX tool. But integrated in Resolve now, it has to rely on primarily the deliver page to do their exports, although not entirely. If I were to move into the Fusion page and I were to add, say, another saver node, right, like you would get in, in the standalone version, well, the saver node itself is going to pack up EXRs. Now, that's not exactly what you're looking for. I mean, it's not at all what you're looking for. What you really asked me is, Windows Resolve, can it export to Apple's, QuickTime ProRes? Yeah. In Fusion, you can export to it. Yeah, but because that's also not an audio-video interleave file, and yeah, it's just a legacy feature, and that's really outside the scope of what I control. I mean, this is pretty much the scope of what I control, I think, right here in this laptop. But it's a licensing thing. It's an Apple agreement, and it's up to the relationship between Apple and Blackmagic Design. So hopefully we can all figure that out.
All right, and everyone, thank you to Sean Carlson today and getting an amazing demo. Really appreciate it. All right, and we're going to go immediately into our panels discussion, so hang tight.
Hi, I'm Michael Klein. I'm a colorist for television. I got my start actually working for 1 hour Photoshop, learning how to color correct people's photos. And then from there, I started doing Super 8 film transfer and making really bad looking home movies look great. And, 30 years later, here we are. A colorist is the last person to touch the picture, and you want to bring out the color as close you can to the director's vision and the director of photography's vision. I love to color grade because I feel like I'm just taking everyone's hard work in the field and making it look like a beautiful broadcast show. The first time I colored for money was for Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. New Year's Rockin' Eve is the highest rated show, and it was my responsibility to take the 6 cameras that were used and make it ready for air. I was color grading for at least a dozen years on Avid. I kept going to NAB and seeing that DaVinci is not just a color grading, but it's becoming an editing system, and it just caught my eye. And then you started seeing that they had so many more tools. And so I dipped my toe in the water, I got trained, and I just fell in love. So let's quickly go through our setup. The first thing I bought was this mini panel. It's amazing how much faster you can grade on a mini panel versus just your mouse. And speed is so important in my job because, the networks are pushing to get things done faster and faster and cheaper and cheaper. And so the more help you can get with a friend like the mini panel, the better I can deliver a much quicker timeline. A big time saver in my workflow are the Stream Decks. I first got this little one, and then I realized how great it was, and I got the big one. And you can actually download pre-programmed buttons for DaVinci Resolve, and I have 2 sets, so I can make each Stream Deck do different things, and it's almost like having the big panel, except a small package and a lot cheaper. A little more detail, I have a microphone to do scratch tracks and record voiceovers. This dial is from Stream Deck as well, and it's my master volume for the whole room. And then if I hit a button, then it's the volume for the microphone. So it controls 2 different things, which is cool. I have a vertical monitor, which I found on a YouTube video. The guy was doing it vertically. I thought, that's genius. So I got a regular 4K. This is where I do most of my work. This is an M1 MacBook Pro that takes care of all of the monitors. Everything is coming from the MacBook Pro. I use this screen for notes, and I use this screen for my scopes. The big guy here is an LG OLED monitor that was calibrated by yours truly. This is kind of cute. This is a 3-button, which is Shift, Option, and Command. Because a lot of times when I'm editing, I have my keyboard up on the side and I pull the mini towards me, and so that way I don't have to reach as far to get to the Option, Command, and Control keys. Before COVID, I was working for Naked and Afraid, and I was going into their Sherman Oaks office, and then we kept hearing the news, and it was getting worse and worse, and we were joking, so like, are we gonna have to do this stuff at home? And literally a day later, we had to bring everything home. So basically we grabbed computers, and they took a picture of us holding the equipment so they knew who took what. It was that fast. And we had to create from scratch a workflow where there's dozens of people that are involved. We have blur artists, we have producers, we have supervisors that all need to see what I'm doing. Once the footage is downloaded, I bring it into my Avid and I prepare it to go to Resolve, which means cleaning up a lot of tracks and making it basically a cuts and dissolves show. And I export an AAF to DaVinci Resolve, and then I close my Avid, go into DaVinci Resolve, and I grade the show. And then I render the show to an SSD drive and bring it back into Avid, relink, and all the beautiful video is there.
Wow, I've never had a drum roll to come on to. Hi, I'm Jeff Sagfield, CTO here at KeyCode Media. We're going to be talking about the Grow Your Career in Color and Finishing with our panelists, and we're going to have everybody introduce themselves. Just easier that way. Rory, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Rory. I'm a colorist. I was previously at Arsenal for about 9 years, and I'm making a transition to Keep Me Posted / Photochem. I've done about 130 episodes of HDR content, and I love psychophysics and vision and perception and painting. So there you go.
Hi, I'm Tahira Foy. I currently work as a senior colorist at Arsenal Effects and Color, but previously I was in the internal team at HBO. I have a background in online editing as well as color, and yeah, I've worked on current kind of series, and at HBO I was doing restoration. We did 98 episodes of Sex and the City from film scans, which was a lot of fun, and yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys about finishing color.
Awesome. Michael?
I brought a bunch of notes with me. Sorry, guys. I'm a Emmy Award-winning colorist and editor. Been in the biz for about 30 years. I gained notoriety in LA when I was one of the first colorists to use the Avid Media Composer to do color. And of course, since then I've transitioned to DaVinci. I'm currently working on Naked and Afraid, but I've also worked on Entertainment Tonight, American Idol, Disney's The Odd Life of Timothy Green, and I've done commercial work for Neiman Marcus, Kaiser, and Lexus.
Excellent. So let's jump on into it. And remember, we're partially talking education here. So that's going to be a little bit of the focus here. So we'll start with Tahira on this one. At what point would you say you transformed into the role of a professional colorist or professional editor? And can you share your journey from entering the industry to becoming a proficient editor, colorist, and post-production expert?
I guess maybe I'll start with the journey, because it's a pretty windy journey to get to where I'm at now as a colorist. But I went to, I guess when I first kind of got into post-production was in grad school. I went to Emerson College, And kind of, I joke and say when you're in the entertainment industry, you kind of have to choose your chaos. And as they introduced us to the various aspects of pre-production, production, and post, I was like, oh, post, I like that. And I worked in a film lab. We had Avids, we had a Resolve, and that's kind of where I really started getting more into editing and color. But then I came out to LA to intern. I interned with a short form promo company. And I realized that just straight out of grad school, I didn't think I was going to be just a finishing colorist on a long form show right away. There were definitely steps. But post-production was my passion. So then in short form, I worked as a post coordinator and a post supervisor. I then also worked as a coordinator in long form. I was in the Walking Dead universe, Fear the Walking Dead. And I gained a great relationship with our online and finishing team there. And that's kind of where I transitioned into online editing. And I was like, hey, can I also color assist? Because I'm into that as well. And so from there, I kind of helped out with dailies, helped out with color tracing in Resolve. And after that, I went back into kind of short form promo doing color. And we would also do specials. And then from there, I got the opportunity to join the restoration team at HBO. And that was great, kind of learning a different, looking at a known grade, but kind of working with the team. I worked with another amazing colorist, John Reed, to kind of match what people knew, but enhance it for our new display technologies. And then now, yeah, I'm currently working on a docuseries for Hulu. I did a season of a dramedy called Average Joe on BET+. And I did a Hallmark movie called Rescuing Christmas. But that was kind of my journey into color. And yeah, I've always had a passion for painting. I do film photography on the side. So I kind of just trying to find my way in, and I found that way in through post coordinating and post supervising.
Awesome. Michael, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I was kind of born into this. My dad was in the business. He worked for Columbia Pictures, and he got into post-production. And, when I was a toddler, I had an Instamatic camera. So I was always interested in photography. I became a professional photographer. I did the weddings and the bar mitzvahs and all that. And all along, I've been learning editing with videotape. And my sister was working for this executive producer who was producing a documentary for Bing Crosby. And he hated the editor so much he fired him. And my sister said, well, my brother's an editor. And he was editing on this system called DaVinci, which was one of the first nonlinear editing systems. And so I had to learn how to edit on that. So I went from tape to learning on this thing called DaVinci. And from there, I worked at a bank doing their training videos. I ended up going to work for a reseller that sold Avids. And they paid for me to get trained on the Avid. And I ended up doing a lot of Avid demos. And then Avid hired me. And then a company in LA called 3 Point Digital, which is kind of the beginnings of key code at some point. They hired me as a demo artist. And Michael Kavanagh, who runs this company, he always introduced me as the premier colorist in Hollywood. I wasn't, but that's what he introduced me as, and I said, okay. And so that started getting around, and then I got a job at Dick Clark Productions, and it just bloomed from there, and done a lot of stuff. Look up my IMDb page, I can't, it's did a lot. But that's basically how it came about.
Awesome. DaVinci, 1993, by the way.
Yep.
Rory, tell us about your journey.
I went to RIT. Imaging was, right? Did you thaw out finally, or are you still frozen? Go Tigers. I was always interested in photo M&P classes. I did actually one of the last Vision 3 test shoots up there. I think is that 250D. I think it was 250D. 5219. Worked on that test shoot up there and got to be on set with some of the engineers came out as well. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I thought I wanted to be on set and quickly realized I do not have the phenotype for set life. I was like, stand around for 12 hours? I don't know. I'd rather sit in a dark room by myself for 8 hours and do it that way instead. So I was hired in Daly's lab, the 24P Daly's lab, doing dailies for Sony. And I worked nights and sat in with colorist Randy Starnes over at Colorworks, and Scott Ostrowski and Matt Lear. They were all really generous with me with their knowledge. And I basically didn't sleep for a few years there. And then eventually moved over to Arsenal and assisted. I did dailies a little bit there too. Moved to assisting Randy and Larry Field with Final Color. And then I've been, as a senior colorist, I don't remember the year, but for a minute. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of DPs and see a lot of other colorists work. And dailies is a really great place to start because it's a great way to kind of get your 10,000 hours in, especially if you work on a courtroom drama, am I right? The multicam courtroom drama, yeah. I see not a lot of people have. So that's brings me here.
Excellent. So skills play a crucial role in success as a colorist. Now, you mentioned the dark rooms. A lot of color bays are very dark rooms with very comfortable couches, kind of similar to a therapist's office. It's really interesting that way. So besides mastering the software, what other skills have contributed to your journey and your success? What advice would you offer to assistant colorists aspiring to become lead colorists, particularly focusing on soft skills? What are you telling those who approach you wanting to get into the biz? Michael, let's start with you on this one.
Start with photography. Learn about how light affects the image and how the image gets from either your camera or your phone to the finished product on your computer screen or on a broadcast monitor. There's, even if you have an iPhone, that's great. There's another Android. There's an app called Halide that basically turns the iPhone camera into a fully manual, where you have to adjust every part of the white balance, the emulsion, the wet film, shutter speed, iris, all that. So you don't have to pay a lot of money to get into learning about imagery and photography. And then take that image and bring it into Photoshop, or if you want the free version, it's called gimp.org. And play with light and make mistakes and try to make it better, and then hit the reset button and do it again. And you'll be amazed in that you can take the same image and color it 12 different ways. And that's a really good way to start learning being a colorist. Second most important is social networking. That's a skill you need to develop. I highly recommend you go to the National Association of Broadcaster Convention, which is coming up next month. We had April. Yeah, and they have there's a colorist mixer where you can rub shoulders with some of the biggest colorists in the world, and you can meet people from Blackmagic who was there, and I was picking their brains, they were picking my brains. It was great, and I have a friend who I've known for years who's a colorist, and I asked him, the footage I deal with, they're farting with the iris a lot, and so you have to offset that so it's all one exposure. And so my friend Tal was there, shout out to Tal, and he gave me a trick using a plugin, and it's saved me hours and hours of time. So social networking, get on the Facebook groups. There's a website called Mixing Light, which is a great place to learn, and you can also talk to other colorists. The Blue Collar Post Collective here in Los Angeles is another great networking group. And finally, the Los Angeles Creative Pro User Group, they meet once a month, and they have great content and good networking for those shows.
Actually, they had a meeting yesterday, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep. Rory, skills with the Z.
Skills with a Z. Well, I think the color skills need to be so second nature that it's something that you can get into flow state very easily, because another very important part of color, and I would say actually the medium that we use almost as much as light is temporal, as a temporal element, is time. Because one of our biggest jobs is to make all the cuts in an edit disappear, make all the shots flow shot to shot to shot. But the other important thing is that we're, especially in episodic land, we got to get through 900 shots in 2 days, or maybe that's a beefy episode. Maybe it's less than that, but we got to get through all those shots that fast. And then I think the soft skills can be just as technical as the knowing about display targets and calibration and all of that, because it is important to make people to focus people back to what their original intent was on set, and to just really reassure them that they've made good decisions. And it's our job to let their decisions that they've already made, they already made it on set, shine. So that's what I would say, is focus on your time management, and focus on your matching, and focus on making people comfortable.
Awesome. Tahira?
Yeah. Just echoing kind of what both of you all have said. I think emphasis on play is really important, because this is the space to kind of try out some things, even though, like Rory was saying, DP does have kind of set looks. I think it's also important to remember, especially working in television, that things that you do will often need to be done at scale, and you do have delivery dates. So, it's great to know how to key and window small things, but remember, a DP has kind of lit something for you, and kind of there was an established kind of look in monitoring. And then when you get into those spaces, knowing that, hey, if I do this on one shot, I need to be able to do this on scale. And then sometimes if it's episodic in spaces that repeat, it might not just be on scale for that episode. You might need to be able to do that on scale for the season. So keeping that in mind. And then with soft skills, DPs, EPs, when they come into the color bay, they're bringing you something that's not done yet. So it's a very kind of vulnerable space. So I think it's very important to be to just work on social communication skills, helping to put people at ease and say, hey, this is the space where we're gonna fine tune. This is the space that's okay. We can try something that doesn't work. No one's ever gonna see that. We're gonna make sure that when it's out, it feels good. So just kind of creating that space and understanding, I guess, listening and building that language and rapport, so that when your EP or your DP is saying something, you can kind of help execute that, understanding their color language and their visual language. I think that's a great soft skill to have.
Everybody needs to be talking the same language, yeah.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, I think having a solid color management workflow, and having a node, your node tree can be whatever you want, but having a system that really works for you, so that you can do what Tahira is saying, and like play and have fun, and be able to make someone feel like, hey, we can try something. You can audition this, or fly it in and see if it works, fly it out. That's a dovetail of the technical and the soft.
Yeah.
Definitely. So over the years, not how, but what have you witnessed in the evolution of color grading? What software and hardware advancements have made your job easier? And then additionally, how have workflow enhancements and tool sets improved? And have you observed any influences from outside the traditional post-production space on these tools? Rory, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, certainly display tech being in everybody's pocket, better and better and better, but also more and more diverse surrounds and more diverse displays. That's definitely a curveball. I would say from like end-to-end production, the ability with which we are able to transmit color decisions from dailies through finishing has increased a lot. From just a show LUT to a show LUT plus CDLs, plus now there's AMF, which allows, ACES metadata files, allowing us to translate, to document a color pipeline from dailies to VFX, which is really helpful in terms of being able to have effects in the offline that translate from different settings. But yeah, display tech in people's pockets rapidly changing, and their ability to watch content in a lot of different surrounds is for sure a big old question mark.
Yeah, we went from $37,000 monitors on the desk to, it's an iPad Pro. It's in my backpack, no big deal. To hear it, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to piggyback off that, and even just in a small amount of time with kind of COVID, I know as a colorist, kind of before COVID, the idea of someone reviewing at home on a consumer monitor was like, I don't know. So I mean, now we have OLED displays, different color front. Resolve, I think Resolve has a remote option now where we can manage some of the color pipeline, and people can actually see something very close to what's in the bay in a home space. I think that's phenomenal. I don't know, for me personally, as I grew as a colorist, I grew in the panels, starting at the minis, moving to the larger panels, and just kind of building that muscle memory. I don't know if that's trending overall, but that is definitely something that has changed for me. I think it's also interesting to see film as an aesthetic as something that we had, and then we moved more into our digital space, and now we're moving into another space where people kind of want some of the aesthetics of film, or people are building pipelines in that can include film in different portions of the color workflow. I think that's also very interesting and exciting, and it's cool to see it change as time goes on.
Michael, thoughts on the subject?
Well, there is a reason why NVIDIA is now one of the top 3 corporations in the country. It's the graphics card business. It's the thing that pushes the pixels that's gotten lightning faster, exponentially faster, unlike regular CPUs. Everything's being done on the graphics card, and boy, Apple Silicon has just blown the doors off. I guess if you saw the video, I'm driving 4 monitors off a MacBook Pro M1 Max. That's crazy. So yeah, pay attention to Apple Silicon, NVIDIA. As far as AI goes, there is a software that's in development called ColorLab AI. You can find it at colorlab.ai, and it's Color, like the British spell it. The stuff I've seen preliminary and what that thing can do is pretty spectacular. I don't see it at all as replacing us, but helping do a lot of the minutia that we do as colorists. Maybe the white balance, maybe getting a show look onto your show. It does save a lot of time. And when COVID, when we had to go from, we'd have a show day where I would show my color grading to an audience, the executive producers, the director, et cetera, and we all got notes at the same time. Well, now that I'm working from home, put it up on Frame.io, and they're watching it on whatever the hell they want to watch it on and giving me notes. We don't have that interaction anymore. So, but I think there's also built into DaVinci Resolve remote monitoring, which is really, really cool. So, and it only has an iOS app, so it forces you to use the iPad, which has a really good OLED screen. And in real time, I can say, well, do you like this better? You like this better? And they can be a million miles away, and we'll be able to work. So, I'm very excited about AI and technology, but I don't think I think our jobs are safe for a long time.
I would think so as well. I mean, the first time I ever saw any kind of a color bay, it was 1991, and it was probably film, and they turned that apple from red to green, and we all just lost our minds because how do you do that? Because it was not something you'd seen in the tools before. People were living in 3/4 in VHS tapes back then, so. It's amazing how far things have come. DaVinci Resolve is our esteemed sponsor tonight. Let's share your experiences with Resolve. Are you utilizing the latest offerings? And how was the transition from older versions to newer versions for you? Any initial concerns? How do they pan out in reality? And in the tradition of Editor's Lounge, are there things you want Blackmagic to address with your workflows and workday? Let's start.
I So I've online in Resolve and I've done color in Resolve. So kind of edit tab, color tab, delivery tab, media tab. Those are like my, if I had my like custom workspace, that's what the bottom of my screen does. I think each iteration of Resolve, there's always some new tool or open effects that I find myself tinkering with. I was thinking just about something that I kind of used of recent. In the edit tab, there's an edit index, which is really cool for nodes. So I've had producers, this was more when we were remote, we showed a producer how to make markers in the edit tab for color notes or online notes that she could then export out to us, and I would use the edit index. I'd see a thumbnail of the shot. You've got the time code right there. Double click on the time code, takes you right to the spot. That carries over into the color tab. So that made my work onlining and doing color, this was on a restoration project, it just made it that much faster. So just having those tools where online and finishing are talking to color very fast has been amazing. I'm a big color coder, so my tracks are always color coded and separated out. So just little things like that. Like I said, every iteration there's always something fun. I don't know, one wish list for me, sometimes in and outs don't always carry over from tab to tab. Small gripe, but yeah, other than that, Resolve has been amazing. As I gave my color journey, in grad school I started in Resolve, and I've been kind of in Resolve ever since for color, so yeah.
Excellent. Michael?
Magic Mask in DaVinci was a game changer for me. It really saves me a ton of time because I only get 3 days to grade 750 clips, and if I want to do anything fancy, I got to do it fast. So bravo on the Magic Masks. I recently had to remove a tripod from a shot, and I did that in Fusion. Now, thanks to the union, I was able to get a free course in Fusion. I got a certificate, but if you don't use it, you forget everything. And so it took me a while, but I was able to paint out a tripod of a shaky camera and someone walking in front of it. I encourage you to learn Fusion. My requests, feature requests, I'd like a button to advance to the next ungraded clip. And pro tip, most of us have what are called node trees, where we don't just start with one node on a show. We actually have a pre-made template of maybe 10, 20, whatever nodes. And when you apply that node to a shot, even though there's nothing going on in that node, DaVinci calls it a graded shot, like it marks it as already colored. And so I'd love to be able to add a node tree and still be able to have it marked as not graded. Yeah.
Rory?
Sorry, too close. Yeah, definitely. I think so I've used a lot of color correctors. I've used Baselight. I also was a luster user for a long time, and the one thing that I do actually still kind of miss about luster is the ability to like drop down a parameter and copy something very, very specific from shot to shot. Like I just want to copy saturation from, like I want to change saturation. I want to do it in the same node that might have a balance in it across, a whatever 15 shot scene. So that would be very helpful. I use ACE's color management in Resolve a lot, and that implementation works great. I also am a big flagger, and any kind of organization. I use group grades a lot to be able to like fly in overall corrections. So being able to group and sort by groups is really, really, really clutch and helpful for me. So yeah.
One other.
Sure.
So, see, surprise. With the edit index, it just hit me. And this might be more for finishing, so if online does notes and it's in their EDL, you can bring the EDL in as timeline markers, which is glorious. So then you have the markers from offline, and when you open the edit index, you can see their notes. So another fun fact.
With Frame.io, you can people can make notes on Frame.io, and you can download those notes and have it go right to your timeline, which is very cool.
Excellent. I'm seeing some note taking around here, which is really good. And one thing I'd like to call out is the plugin manufacturers. In the spirit of Open Timeline IO, if you have a plugin that works in both, say Premiere and Resolve, or Avid and Resolve, license the plugin to the machine so that you have it in both apps, so you don't have to buy it for the separate apps, because we need those effects to transfer back and forth. You are the holdup to Open Timeline IO. Stop being the roadblock. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Reflecting on the current state of overall post-production in the industry, what are your concerns or predictions for the upcoming year or so? Any emerging trends or challenges you foresee as a worry? Michael, start with you on that one.
First up would be globalization. DaVinci is free. It's free for anyone in any city in the world, and they can learn it, become great at it. And production companies are trying to cut every freaking dime right now, and they will start outsourcing. They already have, but I think we're going to see more of that. Budgets are not going to get bigger; they're going to get smaller, and they're going to try to squeeze every dime you can. And shocker. Coloring, grading is one of the last things on the budget, and if they've overspent in production, they have to make up for it in post-production, and so we get squeezed a lot. And just the consolidation of the job. I was just talking, I did a paint out, colorists are being asked to do more and more things, onliners being asked to do more and more things that are outside the scope, like graphics and titles and paint outs. So those are concerns.
Rory?
Yeah, well, surviving the 2 strikes and then whatever's going to happen this summer, that would probably be my my biggest concern. And, making sure that our siblings on set are surviving as well, because it's just been such a shakeup of a year. I think that is the concern, as Michael is saying, is where the stuff stops rolling. So it's important. We're just really hopeful that we're able to get everybody back to work and get. I think it's also really difficult for anybody to predict. There's so much, I think fear and unknown at the moment, that probably the most constructive thing to do is to lean into skills. Actually, is to lean into projects that things that you can actually learn on your own, or personal projects, or things that you can. Can drive you forward as a technician, as an artist, as a person. So that's
sharpen your saw.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think?
Yeah, just kind of echoing both a trend towards kind of shorter and shorter amounts of time.
Oh, yeah.
And DI is something that we're kind of combating, and then also I think we're seeing some more decentralized workflows within post, where you might be working across time zones or continents, even between color and online. So balancing those things out, and this industry, we've had a rough couple of years, but we've kind of made it through. And for all of the unknowns that kind of induce fear, there's still unknowns that can actually be a bright spot, I guess, to kind of lift it back up. So as there are a lot of things that are changing, I think back to just my restoration kind of past, and what, the possibilities that are on the horizon that we just don't know about yet. The fact that display technology changed the way that it did is allowing us to show shows in new ways for people to experience at home. So just echoing, like I said before, even though there are some fears and uncertainties, or uncertainties that may kind of induce fears. There's uncertainties that can be a beam and a bright light, just as people can see things, I don't know if I want to say better, but in a new, more enhanced way at home, then they're going to lean on us as creatives to help that shine. So,
There are opportunities. So looking ahead about 2 years, no, let's say 9 months, how do you anticipate storytelling evolving for editors and colorists? We're in that kind of fast cycle now. Do you think there's going to be significant advancements, such as AI-driven tools in the generative space, or do you foresee more subtle changes, perhaps focusing on repetitive or metadata type tasks? Rory, let's start with you.
Storytelling changing, not technology changing?
Technology changing the way we tell stories.
Then I would have to say I think this has been happening for a number of years, but short form seems to be more and more. There's more and more storytelling. I mean, if you just even look at like TikTok and Instagram, that's happening in shorter and shorter windows of time. And I think even when you look at how many promos the show puts out, or how many, the 9:16 version, for example, that has changed storytelling. I mean, I think that for better or for worse, people are hungry for bite-sized pieces, and are hungry for direction in terms of their eyes too. So, who knows?
Focusing in aspect ratios. That's what I'm hearing. To hear what
I kind of think we've experienced a little bit of it in our display technology shift recently, I guess, in our display technology shift from SDR to HDR. Especially at the consumer level, as those HDR OLEDs especially have come down in the type of home experience that people are having. I think that invites space for creatives to take even bigger swings and bigger kind of, I guess, chances, or but yeah, I think of a movie like Barbie and the fact that people can enjoy that at home in HDR. It's like, wow. I just think that we're getting to a space now where the home experience is pretty far up there, and I think that that's exciting for creatives to take risks.
Michael?
I have a little rant here. Going back to short form, I think the way short form is edited, where they take out all the breaths, and there's no pacing and there's no nuance, and Gen Z accepts that as an edit, or they're used to it, or they expect it now. I think that's where AI is going to find its niche, because AI can edit that stuff stupidly like other people do. And so you don't need to worry about pacing and emotion. It's just pull up, get the thought out. And you get ear fatigue because it's just, there's no pacing, there's no stop. And you hear some great YouTubers, they have great information, but there's no pacing, and it's really, at least for a 50-something-year-old guy, it's exhausting. So I do see AI getting into more of that short form, but again, it's not going to take away from the art of real storytelling and more long form. I think that was, that was it.
Well, to piggyback on that, I think it was last year, it might have been the year before last, there was a movie created out of a Twitter thread called Zola. So when we think about technologies and things changing and pacing, a story being told at the pace of a Twitter thread being adapted for the screen, it created all new kinds of ways to do visuals and audio. So I don't know. I'm always like, there's still hope. We can still get in there, and that required a lot of creative to figure out how to adapt something in that form to a more long-form traditional movie space.
Right. It's a story that might not have gotten told, And I worked on another show called Rap Shit, and the original concept of the show was it was entirely going to be told through screens, and they did quickly realize that it was is a little more digestible when there is more of a traditional narrative to it. But that is an interesting part of humans living right now is that we have like this veneer of social media and what you're presenting on FaceTime is different than what you're presenting on, you know, your social media profile is different than, you know, like a candid phone call that you're having is different when you're sitting and actually talking to somebody. So it's definitely revealing.
And I think another thing that's happened here is all of these different methodologies of storytelling, we can decide very quickly if they don't work. It's a concept called failing fast. We've tried it, it doesn't work, let's go on to the next thing, or go back to the traditional way of doing things, or the more traditional way of doing things. Right. Find out what doesn't work and then discard it.
I do think that's great for filmmakers too. It's like, just try it, make your show, put it up, see if see if it lands, see if it sticks, you know, and you learn pacing. Like it is learnable, all of those storytelling skills, and the more you're able to practice, like I'm saying, the whole 10,000 hours thing, the more you get to refine. And it is nice that those tools have kind of, you know, democratized the point of entry a little bit too.
Yeah, and storytelling also, you go back to like old history of film classes. You sit through the Maltese Falcon and you realize we don't tell things the same way as we did back then, and that was, you know, an example of awesome storytelling. So
Hitchcock is really slow.
yeah, Hitchcock's pacing is, it's designed to the pacing is designed to build fear and anxiety, and there's a reason for it.
And then what we were saying before about this notion of play, right? As things change and creating that space inside of a color, like we are on the frontier. This is where, as we ask these questions, we're in the space, we're using the tools where you play. And Control Z for undo is a lot lighter lift than traditional undo. So I guess that means we should be playing more, right? Yeah.
See what sticks. So speaking of fear and anxiety, it's time for audience questions. So hands, and they'll be bringing microphones around.
So my question was for you about HDR. Have you found it interesting or difficult to say this is your average HDR that's going to be on the market, this is what I'm going to edit towards? Are you editing towards the $20,000 monitor sitting in front of you that does 2,000 nits?
No. Can't be too close. Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, in Dolby Vision, we now occasionally will have a 1,000 nit pass, a 600 nit pass, and a 100 nit pass. I think the whole point of dynamic metadata is that it's a handshake with the display set, so it's able to, you know, the math and the mapping is able to ideally give the home viewer the best picture possible. Also, with the advent of filmmaker mode, for example, on the LG sets, that's a big advantage. Of course, they have to have that on at home. But I mean, I think that the reason we have standards is they're calibratable, and when things deviate in the wild, we know that they're going to deviate from that standard. I would say that the 1,000 nit pass is still pretty standard, but 4,000 is becoming a thing that people are asking for as the X3110 is available, and you know, it's no longer just the Polisar able to do a 4,000 nit pass. But yeah, I think I would say that we, you know, always strive for the mastering monitor, and having a strong color management workflow allows our smaller color volume passes to be, you know, reproduced faithfully. Repeatable and reliable is my whole thing.
And these are containers that are expanding, and like you're saying, these containers keep us grounded technically, but how you map within that container is still, there's a creative element to that. So, you know, a DP, even though you have 1,000 nits available, maybe someone's like, hey, I really only want my candles to hit 600. So there's still a creative element to it. It's just we have more room to explore.
There has been a little bit of study on average light levels in HDR content, so you can look those papers up on IEE, those kinds of databases.
It also raises an interesting question. Who, when they get into a hotel room, immediately readjusts the television set? Not that many. So people aren't going for that optimum viewing experience either when it's not at their home.
When you're working with your DP or client, what are some questions you ask to try to understand
how to grade the project, the look you want to give it? What are some creative questions you ask them to really understand what they want?
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question. I mean, Rory might know this, but in my color bay, I always like to have photo books because sometimes people reference photography. But yeah, you just kind of are building a basis for that color language that I was talking about earlier. And as you listen to tastes and maybe things that are referenced, maybe it's a photo, maybe it's a feeling, you're really dissecting, okay, why are they gravitating towards this, and how do I translate that why into the tools that I have? That's for me.
Yeah. My last show, my DP and I were at a museum together, and there happened to be an exhibit for the photographer that was a hero reference for her in that show. So seeing that reference together in person was extremely valuable. I think looking at a lookbook is always a great idea, but I do always like to know how, I think it's Neil deGrasse Tyson that he was talking about like concept artists for Cosmos and saying like, I don't really want to know like exactly what it looks like when a space shuttle takes off because I already know that. I want to know how you feel. So I like to ask a lot of questions like, how do you feel, or like what, I also like to be really specific about, if something's too warm, like, okay, is it feeling too red warm or too gold warm? Or like, do you mean the entire picture is too warm? So I just am a touchy-feely talker like that. I think words can do good.
It's a back and forth. It's a constant back and forth until you're dialed, and then you're like, all right, we got it.
Yeah. That comfort is.
Yeah. Yeah.
My question is kind of similar, actually. I guess it's kind of in the other direction. It's like when trying to kind of bridge that gap with someone with their creative vision, is there some kind of topic that you think they could kind of meet you halfway on, that like you just wish, oh, if only they'd read this book on this one kind of niche area? Because obviously coloring is a very complicated, very dynamic thing to wrap your head around, and it takes a lot of years to really properly understand it. So is there one thing that you kind of wish every creative that you had worked with had spent 1 hour kind of doing some research on? Or is it just, case by case basis?
It's the color book, and there's a website, do you remember it, that you can look up any movie and get looks from those scenes. I'm sorry, I don't remember it, but it's out there. You subscribe and you can type in any movie title, and what's it called? Shot Deck, yeah. You call it any movie title, and then when you're on the same page with your DP, you can look through things and say, this is where I'm going for, or more, this but more chroma, or this but darker. And that's the conversation you have, and you work off a single reference. It's not, you don't have to read a book, you have to have visuals.
I have a Munsell color tree in my color bay, which is an educational tool. It's a model, color order system. And if you don't know, it's 3 axes. It's a hue axis, lightness axis, and then a chroma axis. And having that model can be really helpful. I think empowering people that like you're totally capable of describing what you want is really, it really changes a lot of conversations in a great direction.
And making sure that it's like, whatever you suggest, we're going to try it out because we're in that space to try. So making sure that it's never a feeling of like, ooh, if I suggest this, I'm going to get a reaction. It's like, no. This is where we try it out and we kind of fine tune it. Sometimes people, they don't always have visual references. Sometimes they have sound references, music, like can it feel like how this sound makes me feel? So it's a lot of back and forth in communication and navigating and just trying to figure out the same visual language for the project that you're on.
One great thing about DaVinci is you can have multiple versions of the same shot, and you can keep going back and forth. You can go to one version, do a tweak, and then compare it to another version. You can have, is there a limit to how many versions you can have on a shot? No. Yeah, so that's a big help.
The layer mixer is kind of similar. I'll use that on group nodes a lot, and then it's like, okay, here's the warm version here. I just had that the other day. It's a transitional scene that was between day and night, and they wanted to take it into like to kind of bridge the gap between day and night. So we did like a warm dusk version, and then we did like a cold twilight version. And it was really nice to be able to be like, boink, it's on, boink, it's off.
And as you're in Resolve, organization is key, right? We're talking about, oh, let's try all this stuff out, right? You don't want to have that session, you've tried all this stuff out, and now your DP or EP's gone, and you're like, oh my gosh, what did we just do? So yes, using versions, labeling things, using a tree so you have a known spaces for where you try specific things, grabbing stills, labeling those stills so that you know what you discussed, so that the next day you're like, when we said warm, was it yellow warm or so yes.
32. Hi, my name is Esperanza. I know you guys were saying something about pacing and how you guys felt like that was very important, and I just had another question. Was there any other elements in editing or coloring that you guys hold like very important, like key, like first number one? I just wanted to know your ideas.
It's matching. The answer is matching. Sorry, that's my soapbox.
You don't want one shot to the next to be jarring. You want it to flow unless it's in the script or the director wants something jarring. So our job is to take all the little nuances between all the different takes or different cameras and match them.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
that's what
on
we're
theme.
shooting for.
It's matching.
Yeah.
Because yes, we're in a visible and an invisible art at the same time.
Yeah.
We are visibly creating the world that is distinct, but then once we're in that world, we want to stay in it. We don't want to be bumped out. So it is matching.
Hi, me again. So I wanted to ask, like, what was the story? I'm Camilla, and I wanted to ask, what was the story behind the name, DaVinci Resolve? I don't know if that's possible or if that's relevant.
That's a question for Sean, yeah.
Well, let's say it to Sean.
Yeah, so the story behind the name, let's see. I mean, it grew out of an early tool set, and then it kind of got formed, and then it was acquired. So Blackmagic Design acquired DaVinci Systems and then decided that the tool set needed to coalesce into one group. That became Resolve. And then as the tools grew, they all ended up in the, under the Resolve umbrella, if you will.
How much did it cost back then, Sean?
Well, I think, let's see, somewhere between $250 and $750K. Yes. Yeah. Because it was a rack full of gear, too.
And a big telecine.
My question is on pacing and licensing. In particular, as an online editor, doing scripted, you don't have to deal with as many of the new pacing techniques when you're dealing with reality TV. When scripted kind of went away, I got a lot of jobs on reality. My last few shows I worked on were like a documentary on Hulu, Hillsong, the documentary. There's a show called Living for the Dead. They use a lot of graphics, a lot of third-party Boris VFX plugins. Now, you guys know, as being online and colorist, sometimes you can sit with your client and recreate that if you're finishing in Resolve. If it's coming from Avid, Premiere, any of those, sometimes it's your job to be like, this push-pull warp looks really good in here in the Resolve. Or do you just have a way of exporting that preset from the Avid, putting it right onto the Resolve? Like, how do you deal with those situations when, especially nowadays when we are dealing with, you have to do VFX, you have to do graphics. Like that show I did was like 22 hours of extra work with all those plugins that don't transition and don't look the same. You talk about matching color online as well. You always have to match that. So what do you guys do? What's your best practice?
At Naked and Afraid, we use Sapphire and Boris, and they're on much older Avid systems, and they're much older versions of Avid and of Boris and Sapphire. But I have the latest and greatest version of both Boris and Sapphire on my DaVinci, and it reads them all the way through. When you export the AF from Avid, all the parameters, it's identical. It's rarely have to do any adjustments to Boris plugins or Sapphire plugins.
I mean, I've seen it done where they've done, like, especially if you're doing transitions or things that for some reason you can do in Resolve, they treat it as an optical and do it in Avid, ungrade it, and then bring it in baked in into Resolve. Sometimes offline can do it, and then you get the you get the XML or AAF, and you relink to the high-res footage, and then bring it in. I guess as an online editor, bring it into the Resolve project.
I don't.
Yeah.
Online editors are the unsung heroes of post-production, so thank you for your service and thoughts and prayers about your 22 hours of material. Yeah, no, I would punt it to an online editor.
Yeah, now I get to say I think that's got to go back to online.
We got people. I mean, but if it is a Rec 709 element, we can handle that with color management at least. Yeah, we definitely have worked with editorial teams before to be like, oh, and I had that with the main title sequence recently. That it was like, here's how fast the title house can get the elements. What's the best course of action here? And I believe I ended up grading it in Rec 2020 and sending them, because of color management. That math is always better to go smaller than it is to expand up. But it's I think just an ongoing conversation of like, do you have the tools? Do I have the tools? What are we gonna do here? It's like always worth talking about it.
Yeah, and I'm working on a docuseries now with a lot of found footage where the control of the color space is not as loose, right? But I'm working in ACES. It's one of the benefits, like you said, of color management, so that even though my project is a 2020 deliverable, some of the footage is 709, and we're color managing that through the pipeline.
Yeah. Sometimes you.
Last question.
Yeah, this is going to be the last question.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. Hopefully it's okay. Well, a lot of it was about color management and what do you use as your timeline workspace mainly. And then also, I'm kind of new to coloring, so how much do you depend on scopes? I'm always looking at the scopes to make sure things are looking good in my parade, everything's balanced, but how much do you look at the scopes and how much is it all just by eye?
A lot. I depend on scopes a lot. Yeah, I mean, they're to keep you grounded, right? It's that chromatic adaptation is a thing. Like you stare at something that looks pink for long enough, and suddenly that looks gray, and things that are neutral look green, and it's it's a slippery slope. So yeah, I mean, the scopes are always up. Tahir and I both use external scopes, and I don't know, Michael, if that's
I use the one that's built into DaVinci, but I have it on a separate monitor. Yeah. And I'd say for me, it's 50-50. I'll do something visually. It's like, did I screw it up in the broadcast? Nope, okay. And then vice versa. It's like, how far down can I get this to still be legal, but still look great on the screen?
When you're working in a room with groups, or when you have multiple people in the room, and we're talking about there is an element of color that is subjective to your eyes, scopes really help when you're like, yes, that is black. There's nothing, there's no blue in there, or that it's not lifted. Here we are on the scopes.
Sometimes it's helpful to have a gray field that you can pop up if anyone's like, I'm confused, we've looked at too many things. You can always throw gray up and be like, hey, here's some sherbet, cleanse your palette, and reset yourself.
That's true.
Just turn on the fluorescent lights.
Yeah, just turn on the fluorescent lights.
Smelling coffee beans. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. All right, Blackmagic Collective, Blackmagic Design, SNS, KeyCode Media, KeyCode Education. Those are our sponsors. Thanks to them tonight for sponsoring this wonderful shindig. And a huge round of applause for our panel. All right, so that's it for tonight. Please visit our friends with SNS and KeyCode Education on your way out. I don't know if the bar is still open, so